2 points. And we're told in 2 Corinthians, though, chapter 5, verse number 7, it says this. It says that we are to walk by faith and not by sight. To walk by faith, but not by sight. But you know what? We do not like that. We don't like it at all. In fact, what we like is we would prefer to see exactly where we're going. We want to see exactly what we're going. But if we could see exactly where we're going, then we don't need any faith. Did you hear what I said? If we could see exactly where we're going, then we would not need any faith. This is our preference. Our preference is this: not walk by faith, but walk by sight. That is my preference. My preference is to be able to see and then go. See and then go. But that was not God's design. If we walk by sight and we can see all the way down the road, we will know, then what we would know is this: we would know exactly what we need to pack. What did God tell these men to pack? Nothing. Do not take anything. But I want to know what to pack. I need to know what to pack. In fact, not only do I need to know what to pack, I need to pack a little extra just in case. You cannot walk by faith and be totally self-sufficient. There has to be vulnerability. And through that, all of a sudden you become dependent upon God. In 2012, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was sent for a biopsy. My doctor, before they told me I had cancer, I went in for a regular physical, and the doctor told me, he said, I need you to go over and get a couple of tests run. He said, there's something just wrong with your numbers. And I thought to myself, this is a total waste of time. I feel perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with me. My numbers are off just a little bit, but I've had numbers off from before, and no big deal. I went for the biopsy, and while I was even doing the biopsy, I thought to myself, this is a waste of my time. I got a lot going on. I don't need to be here. And I never will forget this. On a Wednesday night, I was driving to church on a Wednesday night. And on my way to church, my phone rang. I answered my phone, and it was my doctor of where I went to do the biopsy. And he said, Mr. Flynn, he said, I wanted to call you. He said, I apologize that it's so late, it's after hours. He said, but we got your results back from your biopsy. And he said the results was not what we had hoped for. He said, the fact is that you tested positive for cancer. And he said, it's actually a little worse than even what we would have expected. And he said, I need you to call my office first thing in the morning and schedule an appointment so we can talk about some treatment options to see what we can do. I hung up the phone. My wife was riding in the car with me. And I thought to myself, and what I thought was not spiritual, I thought, really, God? It is Wednesday night. I am driving to church to learn about you. I have spent this entire year out trying to do concerts and things where we always tried to let people come to know you. And this is what I'm getting. I went to church. I sat in church that night. I heard nothing that the pastor said that night. The only thing I heard was, you have cancer. And it's pretty bad. And you need to call us as soon as you possibly can. That's exactly how I felt. And I sat there and I thought to myself, by the time that service ended, I thought to myself, so is this the way it's going to end? I'm going to suffer now for several months. I'll waste away to nothing. Is this the way that it ends? What it did was this. It forced me to stop and not by sight. Danielle, do you have your blindfold? I want you to put... Danielle actually is an incredible young woman. And Danielle, she actually got saved at one of our concerts back in March. But let's just say that this is our Christian life. Danielle got saved, and Danielle said, God, I want to be in your perfect will. God, I want to walk in your pathway. I want to be God, where you can use me the most. And so Danielle, being a great young Christian, she wakes up each morning, and I'm gonna pretend like I'm God. A real stretch. And Danielle wakes up each morning and she says, God, I want to be in your perfect will. God, I've prayed and I believe I know exactly what you want me to do. God, what is it you want me to do today? And God says this, Danielle, step forward. And Danielle steps forward and she's thinking to herself, this is good. This is good. Next day, Danielle says, God, what do you want me to do? God says, Danielle, step forward. Danielle says, God, this is really good. Because in Danielle's mind, her goal is right over there. That's where she'll be in God's perfect will and where God can use her the most. She gets up the next day and she says, God, where do you want me today? What do you want me to do? God says, Danielle, step left. And Danielle thinks to herself, something doesn't feel right about that. But God, if that's what you say, I'll step left. Next day she gets up. She says, God, what is it that you want me to do? God says, Danielle, step left again. She says, God, I feel a little confused. Next day, she gets up. She says, God, where do you want me today? What is it you want me to do? And God says, Danielle, step backwards. Next day, God, where do you want me? Danielle, step backwards. And Danielle is now totally confused. And all of a sudden, whenever this happens, because she knew what she saw, she knew what she had prayed for, she knew what she believed was God's will. And yet God has now told her, Danielle, step left, step back. And all of a sudden you get to this point, and then in your head, you're no longer hearing God's voice, but you start hearing these voices that says, Danielle, you missed God. Danielle, you're going to fail. Danielle, this is not going to work. Danielle, what are you doing? The pressure starts setting in. Stress starts setting in. And then the next day, she says, God, where do you want me today? And God is silent. And now she is petrified. I feel like failure. The next day, God, where do you want me? Nothing from God. There are those of you sitting in here tonight, and that's been your life. In fact, that's where you are right now. What do you do in a situation like that? What do you do when you get to the point that you've prayed and you saw God's will, and you know that God's will was way over here? And you started that walk and you thought, my goodness, after the first couple of steps and I was stepping forward, it seemed right. It seemed good. And yet, now, you're back. It's like you're going backwards. What do you do? I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't start stepping without God telling you to step. And so now here you are, you're confused, and the voices have set in, the fear has set in, and what is it that you do? This is what you do. Instead of saying, God, what do you want me to do today? Instead of that, you begin to cry out to God. God, I've got to know what you want from me, because I cannot stay here on my own. But God, I need you to show me what to do. And when you begin to really call out and cry out to God and beg God to show you, you know what God does? Then God, rather than just start saying, step again, God will come to you just like this. And he will come over to you, and he will comfort you, and he will tell you, listen, child, I love you. And instead of me telling you now what to do, he says, I'm going to take you by the hand, and we're going to take some steps together. And then you start walking back towards where you're supposed to be going. Thank you, Danielle. You can sit down.